Welcome to our webinar, Side by Side, Mentoring Future First-Generation College Students. I'm Barbara Cassio, Yale Class of 81, and one of 3 co-leaders of 1stGenYaleDC, which is sponsoring today's event, along with the Yale Club of Washington, D.C. This webinar is designed to help high school students from KIPP DC prep charter school to prepare for college by sharing our perspectives on a few aspects of the college application process. Welcome to all of you students who are here today. Before we start, I'd like to go over our structure for today. First, we will have our attendees muted during the panel presentations, but then bring you in interactively via chat for a question and answer period. And then for at least the rest of the half of the session, you'll be unmuted to break out into small groups for discussions with alumni. You can please feel free to use the chat to pose questions during the panels. And then during the small sessions, of course, you can talk with your alumni. This session is being recorded. We're thrilled to bring together Yale alumni today from all around the country, some of whom are first-generation college students themselves, and some are allies, glad to pass along their accumulated experience. The tips you learn today should be useful all along the path to college, including interviews and applications you may be doing for internships and after-school jobs. We want you to be able to put your best foot forward at all times. So let me introduce 2 Yale graduates who have overcome the challenges of applying to and attending a top college and came from underprivileged circumstances themselves. Ben Bartolome, can you wave? Hi, Ben. Everybody see Ben? Ben was born and raised in New Orleans, the eldest of 4 born to his Puerto Rican parents. Growing up in low income, he feels he was fortunate to make it to Yale, where he majored in chemical engineering. He now lives in Virginia, where he works as a data scientist for Navy Federal Credit Union. And Clarence, can you wave? Hey, Clarence. Clarence is currently a data scientist at Capital One. He graduated from Yale College with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and received a Master's and PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Carnegie Mellon University. He nurtures interest in STEM among students of color and is an active member of the National Society of Black Engineers. So let's hear a little bit of their stories. Ben and Clarence, can you tell us about yourselves?
I'll go first. Nice to meet you, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for the introduction, Barb. What I wanted to share in addition to that story was the value of interview preparation. It's one of these things that very much is trained and taught and requires rep and mock interviews and such with friends and family and whoever is willing to listen. And from my own personal experience going into it, I would say typically for college interviews, they're maybe about 30 minutes to like maybe at most an hour. Mine for Yale actually ended up being 2 hours, which was very rare. And the tip or the wisdom I can provide from that is that interviews are both directions. You know, not only is the interviewee trying to find out, the interviewer is trying to find out more about you and whether or not you'd be a good fit for the school, but it's also your opportunity to question them and figure out as much as you can so that you can make the best informed decision for yourself. And so in those 2 hours, it really just became a casual conversation, lighthearted and really pleasant. Actually, the stress that typically comes with interviews kind of faded away over time, and so hopefully we'll be able to kind of train and emulate that type of thing for you guys in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Hey, Clarence.
Hey, okay. So thanks, Barb, for the intro. Thanks, Ben, for kicking it off. Yeah, my name is Clarence. I'm a data scientist, oldest of 4 kids, just like Ben. A little bit about me, my parents were immigrants, so they came to this country with practically nothing. And you know, they worked hard for sure, but a lot of things I think that happened for us was about, you know, different opportunities that came our way that allowed us to kind of move on up. So for me, you know, one of the biggest ones was like just even being able to have my own room, I remember, was like amazing. Um, but in terms of like education and stuff like that, I moved around a bunch of different schools because I'm from New York. And I don't know if you guys know, but New York public education isn't that great. So I think between K through 12, I hit like 6 different schools in that period of time. So if anybody switched schools, I feel your pain having to be the new kid all the time. Um, I would say I started out in like public school, which was okay for like elementary, but you know, it was a little bit tougher going into high school and stuff like that because the high schools in New York weren't that great at that time. So I ended up having the opportunity to go to a private school with, you know, it was a lot more diverse, a lot of different people, a lot of different backgrounds. And it was a little bit of a cultural shock for me because I wasn't used to being in that kind of environment or atmosphere, or just being exposed to different scenarios or people or things like that. So I would say my middle school, high school years at some at the private schools I went to really helped me get out of my shell, learn to like meet new people and like appreciate different backgrounds. And it also helped me appreciate what I have culturally. Because I think there's a tendency for us to, you know, or at least I'll speak for myself, there's a tendency for me to kind of shy away and not be as proud of, you know, where I'm from or, you know, what my parents have overcome. But I think that kind of adds to the flavor of the sauce and the fabric of everything. And now it's cool to be different. So yeah, I think that's my story for now. Feel free to ask me questions or ask us questions about, you know, what it took for us to get from that to applying to Yale, because I think college is like another hurdle. But I think some of the things in that story applies in college as well, in terms of like being able to, you know, your first time away from home or your first time being with somebody who doesn't know how to wash laundry or doesn't know how to cook, or, you know, somebody who's from a different country, you know. Those can be really shocking and really different. And so we've all gone through it, or at least the alumni here have all gone through it. So it's a great opportunity to just kind of ask us, and, you know, don't be afraid to ask a question. No question is too small or dumb or whatever. So
Thank you, Clarence. We're grateful for your grit and proud to have you both with us today. Ben and Clarence will be participating in the breakout rooms, so those who are with them can keep asking more questions, just like Clarence said. Next, I'd like to introduce you to our panel of experts in college interviewing. They have a combined total of at least 77 years managing interviewers and conducting interviews of applicants to Yale. So let's mute everybody except for Roy, Suzanne, and Nancy. You can unmute yourselves. And first, I'd like to start off introducing Nancy. Nancy, can you wave? Nancy Edwards? Nancy has a PhD in modern French history. She has interviewed since 1988 with students from California, France, New York City, Maine, Ohio, and the DMV. Currently, she has her own business. She provides academic and college counseling services to students around the world. Roy, can you say hi and wave? Roy graduated from Yale, summa cum laude, and Phi Beta Kappa, and from Harvard Law School. He is a practicing trial lawyer. He is a second-generation American and the first in his family to go to college. Roy has been the chairperson of the Yale Club of DC's interview team in Maryland for 15 years and has managed or conducted thousands of interviews. Suzanne Yellen, can you wave? Hey, Suzanne. Suzanne majored in economics and math and is a graduate of Yale Law School. She's now an attorney at the Federal Communications Commission. Suzanne is the director of the DC and Prince George's County interviewers teams, the ones who would meet with candidates from students at KIPP DC if you apply. So let's now hear from our interview experts. So they'll be telling us some great tips. Thank you, Roy, Nancy. And
Let me start and say that when you apply to college, you will get an interview most likely. In this time with coronavirus and what's happening, it's likely to be a virtual interview, just the way we're conducting ours now. So we have a lot to cover. So let's get going and talk about some do's and don'ts about interviewing virtually, which pretty much apply also in person. First of all, you have to make sure, I'm sure all you can do, all your technology works, that your lighting is right, your audio works, your video works, whatever. You want to make sure ahead of time that those are not problems that you're going to be facing when you start your interview. Then you want to go find a place for the interview that has a background that's neutral, say like what you can see Alice has or Victoria has, something that's neutral. You don't want anything in the background that's going to distract your interviewer or be controversial, such as a poster of some sort. You don't know who the interviewer is going to be, so it's best to keep things neutral. No distractions, a place where your parents don't walk in, your siblings don't walk in, your pet doesn't walk in, and strangers don't walk through as they're coming through part of where you are. Very important to be punctual for your interview. You must be on time. Do not keep the interviewer waiting, or if you don't show up, they're going to wonder whether you're actually going to be interviewed or not. So it's better to be there either ahead of time or just on time. And lastly, no cell phones on, no music in the background, no drinking of liquids, cups, things that are distractive to the interviewing process. So what's the purpose of the interview that you're going to get for college? Well, the main purpose of these interviews is for you to have the opportunity to present yourself as a person face-to-face to an interviewer. It's probably going to be one of the few, if only, live contacts you will have with someone representing the university. What you want to do is you want to provide, it gives you the opportunity to give information or explanations or highlight things that your paper file doesn't show. You have a paper file, it has your test scores, has your grades, has your teacher recommendations, it has your essays. But what it doesn't have is you in there entirely. What you want to do is present yourself to the interviewer. So this is an opportunity to explain things on your application or explains things that don't show or something that's important to you. Why you want to go to college, what do you expect out of college, who you are, and what is your story. How do you prepare for an interview? Well, you need to do your homework. You need to go to the website of the college you're interviewing with and look at that website. Look at what the plant physically looks like it's a background like what you see here, there's a campus. See what course offerings they have, see what majors they have. You don't want to be talking to some college and be interested in electrical engineering and find out they don't have that major. So you do this to research the college so you understand more about the college, so you can think how your interests fit into what this college is that you're interviewing, what university. And it also helps you not ask for information that you could find elsewhere that's obvious because you'll already know it. So what do you talk about in an interview? You need to be prepared to discuss your interests, your talents, your experiences, show that you've thought about why you want to go to the college that you're interviewing, why it would be good for you, why you would be good for that college. Show that you have some knowledge about the college and about the college process and about who you are and why you want to go to college. Now, interviewers are interested in what excites you, what turns you on, what are you interested in? That's what they want to know about, and that's why they're interviewing you. They're not going to probably discuss any of your academics. They want to know you as a person. So talk about personal experiences that you've had that are important to you. Take time to think about your strengths, your weaknesses, and be prepared, to talk about some of those if the questioners, the interviewers gives you the opportunity to do that, okay? Now, you want to spend time on talking, I said, about things that are not in your paper interview, like maybe you have a job and you work in the afternoons. Maybe you have responsibilities at home that aren't apparent from your application. Maybe you have some extracurricular activity that is really you're passionate about. Things of that nature that don't appear on your resume. What about prepared questions? It's a good idea to have a few questions in advance that you want to ask, because it shows that you have interest and you've thought about the interview. And there might be times when the interviewer, him or herself, is leaving a little open space, and you might want to fill that with a question or two, just so there's not this dead silence for a period of time. And so, yes, prepared questions are good, something you've thought out, as well as you thought out your answers, to kind of stock interviewer questions. There are a series of questions interviewers typically ask. What interests you? Why do you want to go to this college? What have you done? How did you think out your answers ahead of time? Now, lastly, let me just give you a couple of presentation tips, how you should act in an interview. Okay, you should express excitement, enthusiasm about yourself and what you've done and your accomplishments. You should be confident about sounding confident. You don't have to be boastful, but you do need to be confident, because you should be proud of everything that you've achieved. Be positive. Don't say, I don't like this or I hate that. Trying to have positive thoughts with the interviewer. It's okay to say, if the interviewer asks you a question, let me think about that, or I don't know. It's better than faking an answer, because the interviewer is going to know that you're faking the answer, okay? Try to be conversational. Don't give one-word answers. What are you thinking about in college? I'd like to go. Or what's your major? Engineering. Talk about, give more information in your interview. Try to maintain eye contact with the interviewer. I said before, don't have your cell phone. We've had interviews where this is what happens. Here's my cell phone. So I'm talking to the person and they're looking at their cell phone. I can tell they're not looking at me, and I can tell they're looking at something else, which must be more important than what they're doing with me. You don't want to give that impression. The last thing I want to tell you is this. The interviewer is there to learn about you, to convey good things as part of your application to the admissions committee. They're there to help you. Use them. They're not the enemy. They want to help you. They want to assist you in your application. So give them every opportunity to do that by how you are, what you say, how you behave, and how you've thought out what you want to tell them.
Thank you so much, Roy. Boy, that was some great information. Every bit of it is valuable. So do we have some information from Nancy that she'd like to contribute?
Yes, thanks, Barb. Thanks so much. This is my third KIPP DC event, so I'm really happy to be here. So thank you all for coming. One thing I would say is that what I'm going to talk about first is something that's really general. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but I've seen it so many times. Please be mindful of your email address. Don't have a kind of quirky email address that's like Hot Babe in DC. That may be true, but the school doesn't need to know that. So I tell my students to all do first name, last name, and if that's too common, then first name, last name, and year of graduation. And use that for everything you're gonna do. Use it for signing up for virtual tours, for information sessions, college fairs, all the schools, because schools, you probably have heard this and are sick of it, but there are a lot of schools now that are tracking demonstrated interest, and they track how many times you do things. So if you have a consistent email, that is very, very helpful. And in these COVID times, the other things I'm going to talk about are COVID related. In these COVID times, demonstrated interest is being tracked in a number of ways. And some of that you may be surprised at. A lot of sports teams have TikTok accounts which you can follow, and just be mindful of all your socials. So if you're following, you can follow a school on Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, but that means also they can look at your Snapchat and your Facebook and your Twitter. So please be mindful of that when you're doing things. Some people take junior year to kind of scrub some of those party pictures from their feeds. So I would really super suggest that you look at some of those things. But in these days now, it's really good. Schools do pay attention to whether you are following them on the socials. And that has even more so now with COVID. And you can also take virtual tours and do virtual information sessions. Some of those are with a live person, and others are canned, but they also write down that you did do that. And that's where you can find out a lot of information that can be particularly useful when you're writing the why this college essay. You can find out a lot about a school by following their socials. And then the last thing I would say is that I've been talking to a lot of admissions officers, and they've all said that they know that junior year, they're going to have to look at things differently. There people have pass-fail for grades and not having grades, and they all know that. But because of that, test scores, a lot of schools are going test optional, so you should look at that, but that they also will be paying a lot more attention to your recommendations this year than ever before. So please, when you're doing your when you're thinking of who to ask, think really long and hard about how that teacher can talk about you as a student and a member of the community, because those are both things that schools are looking for. And then lastly, the Common App is currently considering adding an optional question that concerns your life during COVID-19. And this question is not going to be a question that's like, I didn't, strangle my little sister. They don't want those kind of whiny things. They want to know really kind of how you truly spent your time, and did you do anything useful for that? And so that could be, yes, you got a job because you had a parent and you needed to supplement the family income. Or you decided that you were going to take some lecture classes, free lecture classes from universities, so that you could, work on a language, which your school didn't offer. So those are all things they kind of are looking for, to see if you did anything, if you helped people in the neighborhood, like people who are seniors or elderly, kind of get, groceries, or help them get their medications. So all of those things are things that they are looking for in COVID. They don't want the main essay to be about COVID, but you can have the chance to say something really that was impactful for you. And of course, if your family members were struggling had COVID itself, then obviously that's something that you can talk about in that space.
Thank you so much. And we're on to Suzanne, one of our other interview experts.
Nancy and Roy have made some great points. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things that over the years I've noticed. If you think about the interview from the point of view of the interviewer, they have to write a report about you after the interview. And at least from the point of view of Yale, the report isn't supposed to list, okay, you're in 10 clubs and you have these grades and you took these tests. The point is to try and communicate about you as a person. I'm interested in hearing from the interviewee, whatever it is that interests you. If it's you spend a lot of time working at a job, great, tell me about your job. What's interesting about it? What isn't? Are you excited about it? Are there parts of it you dislike? Why? What have you learned? And the other thing I'm looking for is really to see kind of intellectual curiosity, which is the kind of quality that colleges are looking for. Obviously, you're looking at going somewhere to study. Colleges want to know that you are intellectually curious. This can be something you've thought deeply about. It can be something you read about in the newspaper. It can be thinking about how the job you have, it's a restaurant and they run it incredibly inefficiently, and what you would do differently and a better way of doing things. It can be you're really interested in physics and you've been thinking about this and you read about this and you've done some independent work on, just reading either newspaper articles, or you are very interested in research they're doing somewhere and you read some stuff, but be able to verbalize and explain and go into detail. Because the worst thing for me is to walk out of the interview and I have nothing to write. Because I've got no impression from the student. I'm left with, well, the student does the following 6 things, and I can list a bunch of stuff, but I have no sense of what interest the student is, what they're interested in, or what they're passionate about. And that can be good or bad. It can be, if you're very active in a political cause, I don't even care if I agree with it. It doesn't matter. I just want to know that you're interested in something and you've thought deeply about things. I don't care if it's something I agree with or not. That really doesn't matter to me. But that's a key thing to think about when you go into interviews, is be ready to not just, as Roy said, to sell yourself, but to really show the interviewer what you think about, what you spend your time on, and what you spend your time thinking about. I also want to emphasize doing a little bit of research about the college. I have had several interviews where people explain to me how they want to major in something that Yale doesn't offer. And I've had people explain to me how it's really important to them to go to a school with great football and they want to go to the games in Big Ten football. And it's like, that Yale might not be for you. And you certainly shouldn't lie, but I mean, presumably if you're getting an interview at a school, there's a reason you've been looking at it. So check, like if you want to be a nurse and the school doesn't offer nursing, well then make sure you know in advance, okay, well, I'm interested in nursing, maybe I'll major in biology if that's something they offer. If you are interested in football, but maybe you also like a cappella singing, well, maybe the school has a cappella school and you can talk about your interest in that. But just make sure that when you say something, it's consistent with what the school has, because otherwise the interviewer is going to be like, oh, they're just using me for practice. There's no way they're going to go to this school. And you want to make sure that you show that this is an institution that you're really interested in.
If we have a minute, let me just reinforce what Suzanne and Nancy said. Each of you are important individuals. You each have a story to tell. And what you need to do, and what Suzanne is saying and what Nancy is saying, is you need to tell your story to that interviewer, because that's what they want to hear. And that's what you're good at telling, because you each know your own story. You have to think it out ahead of time, but you are an individual, and the schools are looking for individuals who fit into their student body. And you are among the people that they are looking for now. And so you need to explain your story as you see it and who you are. That is the thing that is the most important interview, because then the interviewer will have something to take away and report back to the school about you that's real.
Beautiful. Thank you for wrapping that up for us, Roy. Yes, each one of you is so valuable. We're going to have a little bit of a question and answer period right now. If you could unmute yourself, and we would take some questions from the students if you have questions right now. Just a few minutes as we get ready to break into our small group sessions. If you have something for our interview experts, this is a good chance to ask it. Please raise your hand if you'd like to. And you can turn your screen on so we can see you. Any of our students have a question they'd like to share right now?
Don't be shy, because you can't be shy in an interview.
Yes, we're happy to answer anything.
All right. Well, Yvette has arranged our groups, I think by now. We have a chance to automatically rotate you into a smaller group where there'll be fewer screens to look at. And then you'll be able to open up with your alumni and ask whatever is in your heart that you've always wanted to know and we're afraid to ask. And the alumni will be there to help you with some of their stories as well. Well, it was great to meet our high school students that we had. They've come to this. And also to meet the alumni and hear their insights. And to show that they cared. I think that was so valuable. So thank you so much for coming to our side-by-side, working virtually side-by-side with some high school students to share our experiences, our tips, our know-how. And I wanted to thank each one of you for taking the time today to do this in this busy and quite difficult time for many of us. But I think a lot of us have learned and are continuing to learn, and not that we haven't before, but how valuable it is to be helpers with each other. So I also wanted to thank Yvette, who handled the tech stuff for us, putting us in those rooms and letting us into the event and arranging for our Zoom. I wanted to thank Alice Lee from KIPP DC for bringing some students to us and helping us to be able to share our information and hopefully be able to make this more available to others as they need this. It's a good experience for us, and I hope it will have been for them as well, that they learned at least one other thing that they can start using after they finish with this meeting. I also wanted to thank our panelists, Ben and Clarence, and then Roy, Suzanne, and Nancy, our experts who really shared some really good information. It was good for us who are alumni who, if we haven't been interviewers, are always welcome to join the ASC in their area to help interview and help students prepare their applications for college. And I also wanted to thank Maria Whalen. She helped us get this advertised to the Yale Club. And if there are any questions now before we close, this is a good chance to ask them. I would like to try and share a screen while we're getting ready to do that. But so please go ahead and voice your question while I get ready to share a screen. And that will give you some information about 1stGen Yale and how to get back in touch with us.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. For those willing of the alums, will we have the give emails to Alice and such to share with the students if they want to reach out? Yeah, okay, all right, we're good.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I think Roy and Suzanne wanted to mention that if particularly to Alice, if any student has any other questions after this, that you can feel free to collect any questions that anyone has, and they feel more comfortable just emailing it, that we have lots of willing volunteers who would be very happy to answer any questions that the students might have after this call.
We had a couple of students who also had just internet connection problems, jobs and stuff that weren't able to sign on today. So that would be great. If you guys would be willing to share your information so that a couple of students can reach out and maybe continue some of these conversations. These were really powerful today, and I thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. You can see if you would like to join 1stGen Yale, we have a sign up right here at tinyurl.com. You can also visit us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and learn more about the kind of work we do and join in helping other first generation alumni, students, and future students. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best evening ever.